Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm David Kerr from Lansing in Michigan, and here are your latest news headlines from around the world. Ceremonies are taking place across Ukraine and beyond to mark the first anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of its neighbour. The past 12 months have seen the unfolding of the largest war and worst refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. This week saw the US President Joe Biden visit the Ukrainian capital of Kiev to promise more arms and aid. In return, President Vladimir Putin of Russia is warning of dire consequences as a result of the West's intervention in the conflict.
It all began after Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky cracked down on Moscow supporting oligarchs such as Viktor Medvedchuk, a close Putin ally, in 2021. Russia responded by deploying troops and armored vehicles on the Ukraine border by the end of the year. Putin claimed that troops were sent to protect Moscow, supporting breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, and to denazify Kiev. Finally, guns began to blaze on February 24 when the full Russian onslaught began. President Zelensky became the epitome of courage by addressing the citizens and exhorting them to take up arms and defend their motherland.
Всім добрий вечір. Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут. Всі ми тут. Наші військові тут, громадяни суспільства тут, всі ми тут. Захищаємо нашу незалежність, нашу державу. І так буде й далі. Слава нашим захисникам, слава нашим захисницям. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
He promised to hand over weapons to able-bodied men and women and invited volunteers from other countries to fight to defend his country. The Russian onslaught killed thousands and caused tens of thousands of people to flee to Poland and other nations. When faced with stiff resistance, Russians were forced to retreat, and in the process, the troops indulged in gang rape, sodomy, and mass killings amounting to genocide. The Holy Father has been repeating a litany of appeals for peace since the war began and even broke protocol by visiting the Russian ambassador Alexander Avdeyev. Repeated efforts to broker peace through the Russian Orthodox Patriarchate in Moscow also failed to yield results. From the onset of the war, the Church has been with the suffering masses, offering material, spiritual, and psychological support. Denouncing the violence and giving courage to believers was the bold voice of Ukrainian Greek Catholic Major Archbishop Sviatoslav Shevchuk through his daily video messages.
Слава Ісусу Христу! Дорогі в Христі, брати і сестри! Сьогодні уже 28 березня 2022 року і Україна переживає 33-й день цієї жахливої кровопролитної війни.
The mercy of the Holy Father knew no bounds, and he dispatched aid multiple times through his trusted aide, Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, the papal almoner. He personally drove all the way to Ukraine on many occasions with supplies, and once he narrowly escaped gunfire. Also supporting the displaced masses and the priests and religious are Catholic charities such as Aid to the Church in Need and Caritas. Amid the suffering, the prayers of believers and those of the Holy Father will still remain as a glimmer of hope for the ravaged nation and its people.
The Major Archbishop of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is urging people across the world to do some work of mercy or to sacrifice something in order to help the victims of the Ukrainian war. Archbishop Sviatoslav Shevchuk said that on the 365th day of the Ukrainian conflict, he thanked the Lord God for being able to continue the fight against the evils of war. We thank him and the armed forces of Ukraine for surviving, and we can say today, he said, Ukraine is alive, Ukraine stands, Ukraine is fighting, Ukraine prays. The Vatican's Secretary for Relations with States has been outlining the Holy See's diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Archbishop Paul Gallagher said that the Holy See constantly works to raise awareness of the cruelty of this war and to encourage people to be open to the possibility of dialogue that could result in peace. He also highlighted how Pope Francis has consistently made pleas for peace in Ukraine over the past year in his prayers and his speeches, both during the Sunday Angelus and the Wednesday General Audience. Meanwhile, the chairman of the US Bishops' Committee on International Justice and Peace, Bishop David Malloy of Rockford, has also renewed the Church in America's call for prayer, solidarity and hope amidst the mounting toll of the war in Ukraine. The US Department of Justice has charged 8 pro-life advocates in Michigan with violations against the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, also known as the FACE Act. The charges come amid a wave of attempted prosecutions under the FACE Act by the administration of President Joe Biden and his Department of Justice that have targeted several pro-life activists across the US in recent months. This includes the sidewalk councillor in Pennsylvania, Mark Houck, who was recently exonerated of all charges. The FACE Act prohibits, quote, violent, threatening, damaging and obstructive conduct intended to injure, intimidate or interfere with the right to seek, obtain or provide reproductive health services. The Archbishop of Kaduna Archdiocese in Nigeria is urging voters to elect less tainted leaders in this weekend's general election. Archbishop Matthew Manoso Nadagoso said the elections in Nigeria on February the 25th will provide the people of the nation with a chance to select leaders according to their Christian conscience. He also called on the electorate in the West African nation to be an active agent and not merely passive receivers of the electoral outcome, adding that the challenges Nigerians are facing can be best addressed if the electorate makes the right political choices. There are 3 major candidates for president: Peter Obi, a Catholic politician of the Labour Party; Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a Muslim politician of the All Progressives Congress; and Atiku Abubakar, who is also a Muslim. He belongs to the People's Democratic Party. A new US immigration crackdown along the border between the United States and Mexico has drawn criticism from some leading Catholic figures in the region. The new policy, which some have dubbed a transit ban, automatically refuses asylum to individuals who enter the United States through unofficial borders or passages through other nations. The new policy will come into force on May the 11th, when Title 42, a pandemic-era law, expires. Title 42, a public health order put into place by the previous Trump administration, forbids the entry of significant numbers of migrants due to the then threat of COVID-19. Bishop Mark Seitz of El Paso shared his opposition to the new policy in a tweet using the hashtag #NoAsylumBan. Bishop Seitz says he dreams of a day when political calculations can be set aside and a safe, humane, welcoming system to receive immigrants will be put in place at the border. Campaigners for so-called transgender ideologies have attacked the Congress of the Mexico City to protest against a proposed bill that would outlaw hormonal and surgical sex change procedures for minors. The protests took place in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The proposal comes from City Deputy America Rangel, who of the opposition National Action Party. It would give individuals who engage in such acts against children a 2 to 7 year prison sentence. Mexico's National Front for the Family has expressed its support for Deputy Rangel and have denounced the protests against her. An agreement has been signed between the Holy See and the Sultanate of Oman to establish an apostolic nunciature or Vatican embassy in Oman. The agreement was signed at the United Nations in New York. The Holy See today maintains diplomatic ties with 184 countries worldwide, including now Oman. Myanmar was the most recent country previously to be added to that list. That was back in 2017, making Pope Francis's visit to the country possible in the same year. Spain's religious leaders have signed an interreligious declaration on the dignity of human life and human rights in response to recently passed laws in Spain. The declaration was signed on February the 15th by the leaders of the Spanish Episcopal Conference, the country's Islamic Commission, several Orthodox churches, the Reformed Episcopal Church, and the Federation of Evangelical Organisations of Spain. Spain's left-wing government passed the new law this month, which allows 16 to 17-year-old girls to undergo an abortion without parental consent, while mandating that all state-run health centres offer the abortifacient morning after pill for free. In addition, the new law enshrines a right to have an abortion in a state hospital. Meanwhile, in a separate package of reforms, Spanish citizens over the age of 16 will now be able to change their legally registered gender without medical supervision. Pope Francis is warning against the impeding of aid to war-torn and earthquake-struck Syria. The Holy Father expressed his concerns to young priests and monks of Eastern Orthodox churches in the Vatican on Thursday. He said, "I hope that everything possible will be done for the people, that there will be no reasons or sanctions to hinder the urgent and necessary aid to the population." Early last week, 2 earthquakes shook southern Turkey, wreaking havoc across much of the nation as well as on neighbouring Syria. Over 46,000 people have already been declared dead. A 4th man has been arrested over the attempted murder of an off-duty police officer in the Northern Irish town of Omagh. Detectives from the Police Service of Northern Ireland are still investigating the attack on Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell at a sports centre on Wednesday evening. Gunmen shot at the senior police officer several times in front of his young son after coaching a football session for a group of teenagers. Mr. Caldwell remains in a critical but stable condition in hospital. The shooting is thought to be the work of a new dissident Republican group, naming themselves the New IRA. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has hit back at the media's portrayal of education policies in the state, saying that the press has created a book ban hoax and misrepresented what state schools are and are not allowed to teach in Florida. The governor's remarks follow reports that he was attempting to stop pupils from studying Black history, but Governor DeSantis insists that the only woke curricula that will be taken out of Florida schools. Well, that's your latest headlines for now. Do join us for more tomorrow. You can also join us at swnews.org for news updates. Shalom.